Good afternoon and welcome everybody to our final session of our webinar series, Great Minds Think Alike, where we dig deeper into the complexities of mining and explore business below the surface. The reason we created this webinar series is because the mining landscape has changed dramatically over the past few years, which presents multiple challenges and trends, including more complexity, efficiency and production losses, and environmental and safety challenges, to name a few. But there are also opportunities. We can reevaluate methodologies, employ digitalization, automation, and new technologies, which enable better visibility. Initially, we gather a big picture overview of the current challenges and trends, and thereafter dive into each aspect of the complexities faced by mining companies, along with the approaches and tools to overcome those challenges. With the mining industry incurring billions of productivity and efficiency-driven losses annually, it's imperative to consistently re-evaluate the methodologies used. The mining industry has taken the same approach to mine planning for over 30 years. We need to employ new methodologies if we expect to get different results. Because the value chain is so complex, we have decided to create a separate session for each element in order to really dig deeper. In session 1, we looked at the business of doing business. In session 2, we focused on balancing supply and demand. Session 3 was about electronic permits to work and saving lives. Sessions 4 and 5 were about production management and unified supply chain. Session 6 looked at data quality as an asset and whether you can actually trust the data that you're using to base decisions on. Session 7 looked at going from reactive to predictive, particularly in building resilient, cost-effective, and decarbonized supply chains, particularly in the ocean. And this morning's session was on smart stockyard management. Today, Rod is joining us from SoftExpert in Brazil to talk about mining with a conscience, focused specifically on ESG and governance, risk, and compliance. I'm going to briefly hand over to Ian Huntley, CEO and co-founder of RSPH, who will do a very brief introduction of who we are and what we stand for. Ian is an internationally experienced business leader with over 45 years of experience in large and small corporates. And Ian is particularly passionate about the power of local beneficiation. Ian?
Thank you very much, Caroline. Let me just switch the camera on so you can see the grey hairs that match the description. One of the purposes of Rifle Shot in the 21 years we've been around is to consistently focus on that which makes a difference to our customers. So you could put in a new financial system or new HR, whatever that is. I don't think it'll really make a huge difference to your business. However, on the value chain, and that's where the name Rifle Shot comes from, as opposed to shotgun, we focus on the business of the business. So if you're a mining company, you should focus on mining and what makes you great in mining. And that is typically all around your operational and business performance. But in today's world, you have to do it with a social conscience, which is also part of today's talk. We pride ourselves in a lot of thought leadership, whether it's in the articles we write, but also in many of the technologies, methodologies, etc., like the Innovation Cubed, which we've trademarked. And these are key in helping customers get to where they need to go to help them steer a path. And we're a consulting-led company rather than product-led, although we be introducing one of the tools we use today. One of our mantras is it's people first, then process, then technology. So people is all about the human capital development, the value of the people, our people, your people, and the people around it, the people in the society that we work in. We can then look at the process transformation through the business. Clearly, you have to have a technology in mind and an architecture, and that leads to the digitalization. But unless you have those processes predefined, digitalization is going to be extremely difficult. Then, of course, we have specialized core competencies across the value chain, both within and with our partner network. And in today's talk, ESG is the buzzword. Environmental, social, governance ecosystems are increasingly important if you want to stay in business. Next slide, please, Caroline.
Can you see it here?
Right, there we are. Sorry, it was a little slow. So Rifle Shot was established in 2001. However, as you hear a bit later, most of our senior team have been doing business a lot longer than that. We're a self-funded private company, so organic growth. We have a partnership ethos, and we reflect that in our key strategic clients. Many of them are well-known household names, but also in terms of our alliances and partnerships. And SoftExpert is one of those partnerships that we've had for a long time. And the same way we stick with our clients, we help them through the rough times, the good times. We do the same with our partners, making sure that we match the business needs in the market. Our experience is across Africa and internationally, both in the business and in the information management area. And just in our lead senior management team, there's over 180 years of business industrial. I spoke about operational improvement focus, and that is the key. And rather than using a consultant type approach, we've trademarked and deliver on what we call a resultant approach. So you really don't want a consultant to borrow your watch to tell you the time. What you'd really like is somebody who helps deliver results, and hence the results. We become effectively part of your organization. Rifle Shot is a member of the Madala and Associates group, and who are a BE, Black Economic Empowered, Black Women owned level 1 company, resulting in Rifle Shot being a level 2. And with this, I'd like to hand over. Oh, sorry, I missed one slide. Sorry, back one, please. The industries we focus on are mining and metals, and clearly the mining and metals go together with energy and utilities, chemicals and process, and both process manufacturing and discrete manufacturing. Many of the customers and relationships we've had in that time go back more than 40 years. So let me hand over to Mike Smith to lead you into the next part.
Mike, are you with us?
It helps if you hit the unmute button. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. Going back a little bit, Caroline started off by saying how the landscape of mining has changed and how we have so many additional factors and pressures on the mining industry that we have to try and keep up with. So let's look at back at what it used to be like. If we go back to the discovery of gold on the reef in 1886, You can see that we're talking about open pit mining. Working conditions were very rudimentary, very basic. The technology at the time consisted of a pick and shovel, some wheelbarrows, some donkey carts. They cart off the ore to the stamp mills. They would use some very dangerous extraction processes, generating a lot of toxic waste, and with little or no regard to safety at all. Next slide, please. Within a period of 2 years already, after the discovery of gold, we've got the influx of people wanting to get involved with the wealth that was being dug out of the ground. Apart from the owners and some overseas shareholders, we started to get the semblance of management, contractors used to assist in extraction processes, mining and extraction processes. The workers were dependent. We were dependent on mostly indigenous labour. They were given a basic wage, generally lived on the outskirts of the community, and again, absolutely no regard for safety or pollution or waste management. Next slide, please. Within the period of 4 years, the influx of mostly overseas engineers, managers, service industries, the discovery of coal in Boksburg, that allowed us to introduce steam-powered machinery and power stations, generation of electricity, very early street lighting. What we're looking at there is a view of very early Johannesburg. No motor transport as yet. Everything was still horse cart, donkey, ox-driven type transportation. And again, in the background, we're still talking about a total lack of safety. Next slide, please. Within a period of 3 years, what a transformation. Here we're talking about Commissioner Street in Johannesburg. Already we're talking about a formalized infrastructure with planned streets, with sewage, with water, with electricity. You can see some of the wires there. Very early stages of telephone communication, very basic. But the industry comprised literally a handful of mining barons. Government started getting involved in this industry, some sort of regulation. And then politics reared its head, and we ended up with the Second Boer War. The industry introduced the use of explosives, shaft sinking. Things became more dangerous than ever. Still no thought of safety, and an ever increasing amount of pollution and waste being generated. And now we come to today. And I've put there that I think this was in about 2016. You can see all the lights are still on, so presumably this was before load shedding. Anyway, look, we've made lots of progress in the last 120 years. There's now been an increasing emphasis in the last 20 years on technology and safety, but we're still facing issues with safety, pollution and waste. Although we talk about safety, we're still having unacceptable amounts of fatalities and injuries. Next slide, please. So until recently, basically we were talking about a focus on profit. People and planet came second. But the landscape has now changed. Instead of owners and shareholders, we now need to talk about stakeholders. And these include, amongst others, the owners, shareholders, we've got management and staff, we've got the families of the workers, we're even talking about schools and clinics. Government has needs and they have regulations they want to impose on the mining industry. And then we've got unions, and depending upon the technology and the material, there are various other stakeholders that we could add. But the picture is that there's an ever increasing need to be responsible and accountable to these various stakeholders. And to put it in a wrapper, it's all about people, planet and compliance. If one has got a lot of pressure to comply with all of these things, in doing that we still have to consider all the needs of those various stakeholders. So the question arises, how on earth do we control, from an organizational point of view, all the business processes that meet these ever-growing needs? Next slide, please. With this in mind, I'd just like to introduce you very briefly to SoftExpert. We have been an authorized sales partner with SoftExpert and a value-add services provider for Sub-Saharan Africa since 2007. We're going to be talking just now about their primary product, SoftExpert Excellence Suite, which is an enterprise management software package. Rifle Shot's involvement with SoftExpert includes implementation services, project management, local support and maintenance, and working together with all parties to extract the best value for our clients. Next slide, please. Just now, Caroline's going to introduce Rod, who's going to be talking about SoftExpert Excellence Suite, and specifically the ESG solution in some detail. But before we drill down to exploring ESG, I just want to go through something just to give an overview of what SoftExpert Excellence Suite is. What sort of animal are we talking about here? It's a centralized web-based platform that provides various solutions depending upon the needs of the client. So we're talking, and I'm sorry about the acronyms, but otherwise it would take up 2 pages. We're talking about business process management, corporate performance management, enterprise content management, environmental health and safety management, enterprise quality management, enterprise risk management, environmental, social and governance, which we're going to be talking about just now in more depth, enterprise service management, governance, risk and compliance, human development management, project and portfolio management, incident management, and a whole lot of other tools that come bundled in the suite of solutions. Some of the differentiating factors with SoftExpert Excellence Suite: it is client customizable, it's web-based, there's therefore no coding required. You can also preserve current investments in legacy applications. We have connectors and can attach and harvest data from legacy applications. Built-in analytics tools can provide instant real-time view of the truth. That in turn will enable accurate decision making in real time. You don't need to generate reports that take months to prepare. There's always a full audit trail of process and activities, which is useful for proven compliance. It also, SoftExpert Excellence Suite is just not a monitoring and reporting tool. It is the very basis for controlling, measuring and improving the business processes. And of course, some incidental benefits, things like elimination of spreadsheets and subjective reporting, and cutting down on the use of paper. To summarize, SoftExpert Excellence Suite is everything in one place, a rapid return on investment, no coding required, and it's very scalable. You can pay as you grow. So with that, I would like to just hand back to Kaz, who will introduce Dilly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I'm going to introduce Dilly Naidu, Chief Vision Officer of Madala and Associates and Director of Rifle Shot Performance Holdings. Dilly as well is an internationally experienced business leader with over 45 experience in large corporates and government organizations. Apart from leadership and really helping to develop businesses, Dilly is also keenly interested in researching the habits and trends that ancient societies take. So the social aspect of today really ties in with Dilly's passion. Dilly, over to you.
Thanks, Caroline. You can just bring up my slide, Caroline. So while Caroline is doing that, I'm about to commit the original presentation skill in that I have one slide and I have been allocated 2 minutes. So what I wanted to talk about, and before Rod comes on to talk about a very, very powerful tool that will enable you to measure, monitor, and report on your ESG. I want to talk about ESG beyond compliance. My personal observation has been that the fact that we are now talking about ESG means that we have to have a truth and reconciliation within our organization of what we've not been doing in terms of the environmental, social, and governance environment. Next slide, Caroline. Yeah, so my observation comes from a discussion that I had with Dr. Professor Mervyn King and his associate Michael Juden. And with the greatest of respect, I said to them, as the originators of what we commonly know as the King's 4 report today, as the guidelines for governance, risk, and compliance, why is there so much fraud and corruption in both the corporate as well as public sector? And there was total silence from both of them. And I said with respect, if I may share my observation, that with all the reporting tools, that unless you change the DNA of the leadership and the organization, the reporting tool is not going to help. And they stood up, shook my hand, and agreed with me that we have to change the leadership behavior and inculcate within the organization a behavior that's beyond a reporting fad. And that's very much what I am seeing from many fads that I've seen in my experience, that everybody's now hooked onto this acronym called ESG without actually reflecting in their own organization about their past, like Mark shared with you where mining has come from, discussing the present ecosystem in terms of ESG, and how do you develop and drive a future that is part of the DNA. That the reporting tool that Rod will share with you is just a tool to help you do that. So what needs to happen is from top C-suite board level right to the ground floor is to embed and inculcate a culture that is cognizant of the entire ecosystem that we now call ESG. Certainly you have to abide by the legalities in terms of regulatory compliance, measuring and reporting, and you will see that from the tool from Rod. But also very key is the organization integration as well as the data integration with common standards. You will also notice that there is a trend globally and locally from the investment and financial institutions that they do not want to fund and invest in so-called carbon contributors like coal, amongst other things. So there's a whole change in the entire ecosystem. Last but not least is the collaboration with the key stakeholders. So examples in mining would be, if you look at countries like South American countries like Chile, Australia, Canada, South Africa, and African countries, there is a very strong move from indigenous communities who are putting a stop on any new mining rights because of the environmental issues. On the side, I'm a golfer for over 35 years, and I played at a place called Crown Mines, as well as CMR in Johannesburg. And what I noticed on one of the fairways, which was quite disgusting, I saw these trees that were a few years old, very mature trees, and they were starting to die. And I asked one of my senior 4-ball partners, what is the reason for this? And he said, it is total disrespect from the investors in mining, where the acid has gone underground and has killed the roots of this plant. So this is what we're talking about, simple examples like that. I can go to communities where communities are having huge issues after the mines have closed down. So with that, I would like to hand over and introduce our keynote speaker, who is Rod. Rod is, after graduating, very involved in technology, innovation, as well as culture. He's also had the great opportunity of traveling globally and spent time in Asia, in particular China, which, as we know, has had tremendous growth over the last 2 decades. Rod has been with SoftExpert. He's a senior business management consultant as well as a subject matter expert. So with that, I hand over to Rod.
Thank you very much, Didi. Really glad to be here with you guys today. I'll start sharing my screen to start my presentation. I hope you all can see it now. It's a great pleasure for SoftExpert to be taking part of this webinar. And I hope that at the end of my presentation, you will have some good insights on how we can support you on achieving your excellence, especially when it regards to ESG. Before I jump into the ESG, the solution that we have prepared for you, I'll just talk briefly about SoftExpert and how was the company founded. We started the business in 1995. At that time, we only had a document management module. And from that, we started to grow steadily. And today we offer more than 40 different modules. These modules would go from document management, process management. I'll get into these details later with you. Today we have over 2,000 customers and more than 300,000 users worldwide. And we have finally achieved our global presence. We are now present in all 5 continents. We have our own business units, those dotted in yellow, as well as partners everywhere. So, and that happened because SoftExpert offers a very wide range of service to regulated industries. So from agribusinesses to automotive, mining and metals, health operators, retails, you name it, and we will have a customer currently using one of our solutions. That happens because the software and the way the framework is designed is all made in order to comply with the latest regulations. Every time we have a new regulation popping up, we will adopt that framework, and so the software can also work with this new framework, with this new version of the regulation, with this new version of the standard. And so today we provide as many as you can see. I'll be jumping some of these slides, but I think that may be important for you to understand some of our customers. We have here, as you imagine, just a few of them, but some we provide them solutions for big companies as these ones, but we also provide solutions for medium and even in some occasion to small companies as well. Well, and then I'll be jumping very briefly here to our business excellence puzzle, where you will see all those acronyms that Mike has mentioned in a bit of deeper details. I'll be not jumping into each one of them, but I would just like to mention what this solution does is we organize it, all those 40 different modules that I have mentioned to you, and we group them into a solution. For instance, we have the BPM module that will comprise the process module with our form editor, together with the document module, together with some performance, so you can keep a track of your KPIs. You have also your the GRC, will help you manage your risks, your compliance, and build up your performance and strategic map, as well as we would have our ECM, which will help you to manage all your company content. So depending on what is your focus, we will be helping you with providing one of these solutions, right? The purpose of our presentation today is to give you a brief introduction about the ESG. And so for that, I'll be jumping into this tab. Well, our ESG solution uses, as I told you, I think around 10 different modules, right? We will start with the first part, which is the data collection. So maybe one of the most critical parts of the ESG is to manage your data, manage your waste, manage your energy consumption. And so we have here a way of doing that. Today, we offer this middleware that will provide you middlewares and APIs that will provide you the connection with your legacy apps and the current ERP, CRM, HR. So everything will be, we will be able to pull this data from all these different softwares that you've been currently using, and we will be adding them to the indicators, to the risk measures, and you will be able to see that and monitor that. We provide process automation with document capturing and indexing as well. So once you have a process, you establish what kind of information you want to extract, the system will orchestrate everything. So here we are giving you an example of a process that we start with the scan and the load of the document. Then after that, this information is stored in a form, right? And after this information is stored in a form, we will collect the signature, and that will be transferred into a PDF. So we make all that seamlessly, easy, and automated. We provide different ways of integrating. So you can not only import information from your current systems, but you can also extract that information and collect information as well. That will be done through a series of different services that we have. So here is one of the examples, right? We are looking at a specific month. We are pulling the information from one of your systems, and that would fill out an indicator. I have an example here to show you. For example, this is a waste data collection. We start a workflow. My user here is a quite famous person, Mr. Elvis. And when I start this workflow here, the user will be saying what is the period of this that is being monitored, what is the unit that we will be using. So let's say it's a volume, the quantity, if there is a case an attachment, what kind of waste data that we would like to input. So you add here what kind of waste, the type of waste. Let's say it's a plastic, it's hazardous, or are we going to recycle it? How do we dispose that on site or outside? Oops, and the quantity. 500 kilos. Oh, with that, later on, after I finish this workflow, this information will be sent to the database. And once it's sent to the database, we will be then be able to monitor everything that is going on. So we have here so far the total waste that was generated, what was the type of that waste, the intensity that we've been generating that, if where we are disposing it locally or not, the classification. We can also do that with energy, for example. For instance, we can collect and insert how much energy we are consuming, right? The most interesting part of all that I'm showing you is that this portal is totally customizable. So everything that you see here can be customized according to what you need. So Rod, we don't want to do that manually. We want to do that automated. We just want the system to read from my ERP the information and insert into SoftExpert so I can monitor and I can treat that. It's also customizable. This here is an offer that SoftExpert has now for those that don't have this level of sophistication, let's say, and they want to start to use the software anyway. So here is a way that can do that. And they will be able then at the end of the day to provide a report with all that information. So all that we add into the energy data can also be monitored here by the performance module. So we have here all the indicators aligning the measurements of the energy inside the company, outside the company, specific consumptions. We can also start initiatives and treatments. So for that, we also have a specific workflow that will allow you to treat initiatives, to start treatments initiatives. So we want to know what kind of initiative we have, if it's an occurrence or if it's an opportunity for improvement. So that said, I'm coming back to my presentation. Some parts of these processes, they can be automated back using the BPM and an ERP. So we can use robots to help us to automate this process, and they will be part of some of the steps of this process. So we can see here, for example, in the step number 1, it can be either human or bots that will execute a task. On the step number 2, we will have the robots identifying and if there's an error and then taking the decision. And on the step number 3, after we have the data capture, the recording will be, in this case here, executed by the robots themselves, right? So here's yet another example how we can be using the BPM and the ERP, the robots at the same time. So we have the user acting upon on the first task. The robot will automate the second step, and then the third step for the approval, we have a human interaction, and the result will be sent to those that need to be part of the process. All that is automated and can be tracked as well, right? Inside our ESG solution, we also offer what we call the requirement module, where you will be able to map all the requirements that you need to comply with. And by that, you will be able to create a library with all those requirements. If you already have these requirements mapped, it will be very easy to import them. Today, we offer many ways of importing those requirements. As the document module and many other modules in the suite, actually, you will be able to classify those requirements as per categories. You'll be able to also integrate the requirements with the original regulatory content. So we have a connection between the module, the requirement module, and the document module here working. For all requirements, you can define a specific workflow for mapping and approving. So we have here the draft, the review, approval, and release step. All that can be traced as well and customized. So what you see here is just an example. Important to mention that we offer two different ways of reviewing items within the suite, and one of them is to use the BPM in order to achieve that. So we can map using the process any kind of workflow to review, for example, the requirements. These requirements will also be integrated with other modules. So as you can see here, we have a close integration with the controls, which are from the risk module. We have a close integration with the action plan, with the incident module, with the risk module, with the project module. So you can link to each one of the items of that requirement a specific item of the suite. So everything is integrated. Then you can check the applicability. So if you are actually complying with these items or not, how much you're complying, where you need to improve. Creating a specific also checklists for each one of the steps you're taking. And after all, you'll be able to manage all that and monitor all that using the portals. When it comes to KPI monitoring, we offer a solution that's we call performance module, where you'll be able to draft your strategic maps. Right? These strategic maps later on, they will be linked to the scorecard. So here is an example of how you can create and draw the strategic map using the ESG approach. After you define these items, right, of your map in environmental, governance, and social, you then start building up your scorecard. So what we have here is the list with all the indicators, and then we are just bringing on the indicators into the scorecard. You then start building up these indicators here with using, in this case here, we're using the GRI indicators. We have also in this demo environment that I was showing you a list with all of them. After you have your scorecard ready, it's just a matter of adding the measurement. And here, what we've done in this presentation that I have just showed you, we have created the indicators, but the readings are done through that workflow that I showed you just now. So you don't actually need to go, here. You actually don't need to go one by one and adding the target and measurements. Maybe you have to add the targets for all of them, but the measurements, it can be done either here inside the scorecard or through the workflows. And I may add here that the workflows might be the best solution for that, because from time to time, we set the indicators, we set the strategy that we need to take, but most of the times we don't do it. And so the workflow, it's a very good tool because it will remind you that you need to be adding the measurements, for example, every month, every day, every quarter. The system will then help you will remind you of those tasks that you need to perform. Okay. Those scorecards, they can you can associate them to, for example, projects. As you can see here, we have the projects in order to achieve those indicators. And all that can very easily be extracted into reports. And you have a list here with all your indicators, with the period and the charts for each one of them. And not only printing the reports, but you can also see that in real time using the portals as well. So each one of these items here is a specific indicator, which we'll be able to read on real time. And to build that is quite straightforward, quite easy, right? Here's an example of how you can easily configure a portal. Right, so now we have here the KPI on the portal itself. Now, many of our customers, they like to have like a monitor in a specific department, and they can be aware of the KPIs on real time all the time. Well, part of the ESG offer that we call solution is also the document module, or where you will be able to manage all your documents lifecycle. So from the initial request of that document, for the creation, for the draft of that document, to the review, approval, the knowledge transference, until the expiration validity, our document module will help you to manage all those steps. Important to first saying that every of these steps are configurable. So I can configure any kind of flow that I want, even using the process module to do that. I can choose which way I would like to transfer the knowledge to my employees. If I want to test this knowledge transference, as well as the expiration and validity of that document. Everything will be managed within the document module. That would also allow you to automate the capture of those documents. How do you want to capture these documents? So today we have a capture module that will help you to do that. Throughout the review process, you will know what information was changed before you give your consent. The document creation also allows you to establish what kind of ID you want to use. If you want to use a specific file from your computer, or even if you want to have a template. Who will be part of the review? These approvals and also the visualization of these documents can also be done using a mobile phone. So even the drafting approval, the review, the release of those documents, all these steps can be done through smartphones and tablets. You can use the quick search to find any kind of document that you want in the system as well. As I told you, we have a way of controlling the expiration of the document. So the system will be notifying you, let's say, in this case, 90 days before that event happens. These knowledge can be transferred as a mere publication acknowledgement. Most of our internal documents in SoftExpert are done like that. which I will acknowledge my which I will when I will be acknowledging that I have read the document. Right. Later on, I cannot just say that I was not aware of the new policy, of the new manual. All the information can be then also monitored by the portals. Jumping to the next one is the risk module, where you will be able to create a very extensive library with all the risks that you have. And those could be regulatory risks, supplier risks, data security risk, environmental risks. You'll be able to then evaluate each one of them. That will create a centralized risk catalog. So the same risk can be used multiple times in different processes, for example. We offer the possibility of configuring any kind of evaluation method. So not only quantitative, but qualitative. You can have a matrix, 3 by 3, 5 by 5, 10 by 10. Also, the nomenclature that you use, also configurable. Here we have an example that comes from high to low, but if you want the opposite is also possible. It's very flexible too. And you then be able to, within a process, associate the risks to each one of the activity. So you map the process first. You say what are the activities in that process, and you have your risk library, and then you associate this risk to the library. You say who is the responsible, and set the evaluation frequency, and that user will then receive a form like this where they will have to evaluate the risk. In this case here, my user would be then the responsible for the soil contamination, and from time to time, maybe yearly, I will receive a task like that to perform my risk assessment. Depending on the result of that assessment, then the system will ask that user to respond to that evaluation, right? You can always respond to evaluation, right? Even if the risk is low, but you can also establish in the system itself, you can configure that in the system that, for example, if the risk is moderate or high, then a certain activity will be expected by the risk owner. The risks then can be monitored by in a structure within the organization. So here we're looking at ethanol production. We have each one of the activities, and now we're looking at the risk listing. The same way we did with the risk, we will also do with the control, but we would take a step further, because usually the controls, we not only evaluate, but we also test them. And then you'll be able to establish how many samples were tested, what is the percentage that you need to pass before you consider that that test has failed or not. After that testing, you can keep a track of that control test history. So we can see here that in this specific control that we are looking at, it failed most of the times. And all the information can be transferred to the portals. So for me, the coolest part of the system is that you don't need to navigate through all the windows. You don't need to have many clicks. You just need to access the portals that are relevant to your daily activities. And once you've done that, you have access to all the information. When it comes to ESG, it's really important to have an idea of who is supplying the goods for you. And so our supplier lifecycle management will help you to do that. Things from the contract, purchases, quality management, monitoring risks, performance, and qualification and integration of those suppliers. So we first start with the supplier qualification process. This process should be mapped within the ESG pillars. You have then a supplier approval form. You set here the standards for your suppliers, and if they meet that standards, they're most likely to get approval. If not, they'll get discharged. So here is an example of how we mapped these processes for other customers. Fill out the form. Important to mention that these forms, as you see them, they are also totally customizable. You can customize all fields and looks of these forms. As I've showed you before, you can scan information, for example, from a contract. That information will be sent to a form, and that form will be then creating a electronic form that will finally be signed. Today we have a collaboration with DocuSign for that. We have this integration with your ERPs, and having that integrated with ERP, we can look for all the suppliers that you have and transfer that list into SoftExpert SE Suite. Since the payment as well, right? When we are submitting an invoice, this invoice can go through a specific workflow. So let's say that we have an invoice that's bigger than 50,000 but smaller than 100,000, and so we don't need, for example, the presidency approval. We can add just the intermediate and the area director. But if it's bigger than 100,000, then we also need to involve the presidency. That kind of workflow can also be managed. At the end, we will have the supplier quality inspection. So we go through these 4 steps: identifying the goods, qualifying the goods, inspecting the goods, and then finally releasing them. And if it's founded a non-conformity in any step of the way, you can then start the supplier non-conformity management through an automated process. All the info then will be transferred to a portal like this, where you'll be able to track and check, right, your supplier's scores, for example. Coming up next, we have the audit management, where we will be taking information from the internal sustainability audits. We can have supplier audits, financial audits, and also ISO or any kind of standard audits that you wish to have. Using the requirement modules where you have maybe already mapped the ISO, for example, then you're going to audit that as well. You can build up a plan for that audit what are the objectives, who will be responsible when you're starting, what is the scope and the criteria that you'll be using it. You create the schedule for each one of the activities of that audit. So you can also not only create an SE document in our SE document and later on publish, so everyone will be aware of that schedule. And when you go to execution, every time that finding, maybe you have find a non-conformity there, then the system would maybe require you to add an occurrence to that, an attachment, or even an evidence that you have actually performed that audit. You can keep a track of your auditor's schedule, as well as you can track all that information on portals. Next one, we're talking about the deviations management. Again, the deviations management can have many different triggers, many different sources. So it could be an audit non-conformity, could be an accident, a work accident, a customer claim, a supplier non-conformity, a risk evaluation. Many things could be a trigger for the deviation management. That deviation can be mapped and planned according to you, so it's also fully customizable. All the steps of that deviation will have an email sent. So we have, let's say, started a work accident. Once we register that accident, who is going to be the next person to receive the notification? Maybe the manager of a certain area that is involved in that accident. So the email goes to him. You have to check that. He can actually execute the tasks from the email itself. The registration form, as I mentioned to you, can be configured according to your needs as well. We provide 3 different tools for the root cause analysis. The Ishikawa, as you saw, the 5 whys, and as well as the 4 tree analysis. That most of the times will end up on a corrective and preventive actions, as commonly known as CAPA. So here we can define what are the actions that need to be taken in order to correct or prevent these actions to reoccur. And all the information then will be managed by portals like this one, right? The very last slide that I have prepared for you is the form data stratification. So everything that you add and you enter in the form can be extracted into these analytics visions, and those visions later on can be displayed on the portal. So you can publish them on these portals. So what you're looking at here is yet another vision of the analytics, where you're creating here a table, and also by creating PDF reports, and all these graphic analysis, all these tables that you have, they can be transferred to portals, right? So everything that you see, for example, in this portal here in a demo environment, it was created and used. We created using the analytics module. Okay. Well, I can tell you one thing about our solution is that a very, very powerful solution. We can customize it according to what you need. And we offer lots of very powerful tools that, when put together, create a very unique software to help you manage not only ESG, but also GRC, ECM, and anything that you might need to manage within your organization. Okay. I would like to thank you all for the opportunity once more, and I'm open to your questions if you have any.
Thank you, Rod. There's a question from Mike that says, does ESG include project and portfolio management?
Yes, ESG does include project and portfolio management. It's part of the solution as well.
Thanks. And then also, obviously, the being cognizant of ESG responsibilities, the mines obviously need to make money still. So I'm just wondering if the value there is derived from avoiding consequences like fines or closure. And kind of in the same question, is this aligned with the corporate strategy?
Yes, I say that everything starts with the corporate strategy. Once you have defined what is the strategy, you know where you should be going. Then only after that I think that ESG can be fully implemented, because that is the key. Having the C-level especially aligned with that kind of strategy would be the key to have the ESG in place. Otherwise, it's just a acronym, I'd say.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense. And Mike's asking if you have an example of a strategy map.
I do have an example of a strategy map. I actually showed you in the beginning of the presentation. So here we are setting this for the ESG. That's one example of a strategy map. I can collect other examples from other demo environments that we have. So here I'm entering yet in a different environment where I have my KPIs. Just 1 second. Okay. Not this one. Oh, it's not opening. I think it's not here.
No problem, Rod. And then just another question. Obviously, a system like this is very complex because everything is integrated. So how long would it take to implement?
Well, for this new offer that we have on ESG, this one that I was showing you during the presentation, that is pretty much ready to use. So we have all the workflows, we have most of the indicators, we have a series of risks that are already added to to the environment as well as a list of different workflows. So if you take this offer that we have now, I'd say that not very long, within a month, we could be starting using the software. But of course, that depending on the level of customization that you need, then it could be a bit longer. I'd say we could be taking a couple of hours more to implement a solution like this.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the audience? All right. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Thank you, Rod, for your input. And this a very impressive demo of what we can expect from SoftExpert's ESG solution. And with that, we'll say thank you to everyone for joining our webinar series, Great Minds Think Alike. Thank you and goodbye.